Welcome to the Therapeutic Food Solutions podcast. I'm your host, Marian Mitchell. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach, therapeutic diet expert, and founder of The Road to Living Whole. There are many different diets out there. It's hard to know which one is right for you with your chronic illness and autoimmune disease. In this podcast, I'm going to share with you the foundational pieces every single therapeutic diet out there shares, and also how to use the best one for your particular diagnosis. If you've been looking for a meal planning partner, help navigating the complicated healthcare system, and want to feel better quickly, I'm your girl. Grab your kombucha and notebook. Let's dive in. Well, welcome to the podcast. Today, I have an incredible guest. Her name is Adrienne, and she is going to share her story with healing and reversing multiple sclerosis naturally. And I am so excited because so many people think that you can't do it at all. You're just stuck with this condition forever, and you're not. And I'm so excited for Adrienne to share her story. So can you please introduce yourself, and then let's just dive right in.
Okay. Yeah. So my name's Adrienne Scharli, and when I was 28 years old, I graduated from college and I moved to Colorado, and that's where I live now. And life was pretty good. I didn't have a lot of friends at that time. I was working as a manager in sales. And I remember one day I woke up and I was numb from my feet to my chest. And that was quite scary. And I didn't know what it was. And so I called my mom and asked her, what I do, because she's an ex-nurse. And she said, well, honey, you should go to the neurologist and call me afterwards. So I did that. And he gave me some, physical tests where, I went in, he tested my balance and had me touch my nose and all these other physical tests. And I said, well, what do you think I have? He said, if I can bet on it, you probably have MS. And that really hit me. It was very uncomfortable too, because when I was walking around, it was like pins and needles. If your feet ever have fallen asleep, that's what it felt like every single step I took. And then just numbness, my hands, and then just I couldn't feel my legs. Or my feet, or my midsection. So told my mom, and I remember at that time, if you remember, we were really kind of, I guess, tagged as somebody with a chronic disease with your insurance company, right? If you were diagnosed, I remember when I called my mom, she goes, well, be sure you don't get diagnosed, because then your premiums will go through the roof. And that was quite scary. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm just going to live life and try to be happy and hope that this disappears. And you know what, Marianne, it magically did. I don't know what I did at the time. It might have been diet. It might have been my attitude. But about a month later, it faded. It slowly faded away, but it did. So life went on, got married at 35, got into real estate. And when I turned 45 years old, 3 days later, I woke up and I had a blind spot in my left eye. And I didn't know what it was again, right? So talked to my husband about it. And so after 3 days, he said, well, go to the eye doctor. And so I did. So went to the optometrist and they gave me some tests. I don't know if you've gotten your eyes tested lately, but how you look into a machine and you're given a clicker and these little squiggly lines or spots come up and you're supposed to click it when they come up. And so I passed my right eye, but obviously my left eye did not pass. And so I sat down later in the chair with them and I said, well, what do you think's going on? And he said, well, it could be a couple of things, but you could have MS, because that's an option too. And then I thought, okay, here we go again. This multiple sclerosis came up for a second time.
What's crazy is it's, just to interrupt for a second, it's crazy. It's almost 20 years later.
Yeah. 17 years later. Yeah.
Yeah. And and it manifested completely different. It's,
so like
the body the way that it manifested. Like the body is so interesting,
It
like
is.
to think that like at first you were like paralyzed in pins and needles and could barely move. And then the next time was you were blind in one eye.
Yeah, I could move. I was just numb.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's so interesting because everybody that's diagnosed with MS has something different. Like we're all different. So, after seeing that eye doctor, he had me see a different eye doctor, did more tests, and then that doctor said, "Well, go to your primary physician." So, I did that. And then that doctor said, "Go to neurologist." So, I'm like, here I am back at the neurologist. And so then that doctor said, "Well, let's get some blood work and let's get an MRI for you so we can rule some things out." So I did that and came back to get the results. And the number one thing I remember about my blood work was my vitamin D was very low. So that is a big deal. Most people with MS have very low vitamin D, and actually a lot of the population is low in vitamin D. So I want to tell people, take your vitamin D daily. And then she read me my MRI results, and I had lesions all over my brain and all down my spine, like too many to count. And that was devastating to me. I was 45, and that's not part of my life plan, right?
Right.
All she did was, she tried to explain to me, this is doctor jargon, what was happening. And she gave me a bunch of brochures as I was leaving out the door. And she's like, "Oh, by the way, don't forget to make another appointment with me when you leave, because we need to figure out your treatment." I mean, that was just that day. You never forget that kind of day. And I was just destroyed. And I thought, what am I going to do? I can't believe this is happening to me. Like I thought that I ate right, I exercised, like I wasn't overweight, like I thought I did everything right. And so anyway, I told my husband, and he was destroyed too. He's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this." It was a couple of weeks later, and he goes, "Honey, we need to tell the kids." And so I had gotten a steroid treatment by that neurologist a week later. And so I had steroids for about, like a drip in my arm for 3 to 4 days in a row. And afterwards, I got to tell you, I had a migraine headache that lasted for a month, and I don't get headaches. So that was really interesting to me. It was awful. I couldn't think, I couldn't work. I was in bed for 30 days. It was just a pounding headache. It just felt like somebody took a sledgehammer and just hit me in the head for like 30 days. Like it was awful. But anyway, my husband said, "We got to tell the kids." And so I was so lucky in that, after he told our kids, who were older, our oldest son had a girlfriend at the time, and he's now married to her. Her name's Sarah, and she went to Colorado State University and got her dietetics degree. And she said, "Todd, Adrienne can control her MS with diet."
Just to interject, that's amazing because they're
Yeah.
not really taught that in school. So she had to have done extra
No.
research into diet in
Yes.
relation to disease, because a lot of times they say food doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's
No,
great.
doctors, they don't tell you about diet. And yeah, so anyway, that got me curious. And what I came across, I started researching this, and I came across a TED Talk. And a lot of people know about this, probably in the MS world. So Dr. Terry Walls did a TED Talk. I just luckily came across it. And it's about 20 minutes long, and she talks about her story. So, she is a doctor, and she was diagnosed with MS, and she was in her 4th stage in a wheelchair, going to the best doctors, in her field. And finally, she did her own research, and started giving herself supplements, and then decided, well, I figured out what the body needs, what vitamins, minerals, that kind of thing, right? And so she interchanged the supplements with food. And it took her a while, but I think it was after about 30 days or so, she started, she got out of bed, started walking a little here and there. But then 6 months later, she's riding a bike and then she's walking. Like that was an incredible story to me. I'm like, if she can do that, like then I can heal myself. So it was a eureka moment for me after I saw her talk. And I remember that day, I went into my kitchen, went through my cupboard, threw out all the processed food, threw out the sugar, went into the fridge, poured the milk down the drain, and got rid of all the gluten. So, it took a couple weeks, probably 2 to 3 weeks because at that time, after I had the steroids, the numbness started again. So I didn't mention that. And then I had numbness in my hands, and then I had brain fog, and then I just wanted to sleep all the time. So as soon as I saw that video, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to heal my body. This is really exciting to me. So I went to the grocery store like that day and picked up all these vegetables, spinach, all these quality meats, and just started eating really well. And, I started getting better little by little, and the numbness started going away. And I started having more energy, and the brain fog gradually went away. This is probably 3 to 4 weeks. And then the blind spot in my eye took a couple months. So I want to say it took 4 months, 5 months, because it was just one day. I just I wiggled my fingers, near my eye because I couldn't see them, on the side of my eye. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I can see now. The blind spots are gone. Like I thought it was a miracle. So, ever since I've had this kind of life change and this happened to me, like I gotta tell other people that they can heal themselves too, right?
Right.
I just feel like we're not taught, we're not educated. Like, why don't we not know this? This is like the 2000s, right?
Right.
Um,
So to interrupt,
yeah,
to talk about nutrition and Terry Walls, like her story is absolutely incredible. I just
it is.
love hearing her story. Like she's been on a slew of podcasts lately, but more beyond that, because she's a medical doctor, she has been leading studies in the role of nutrition and
Yes.
disease, but also probiotic strands and disease and the role
Yep.
of gut health. And, her book has been a game changer for a lot of people,
Totally.
and
Yeah.
it's
And
great information. It's dry. I will warn everybody. It's a
yeah, it
very
is dry.
dry
Yeah, yeah,
medical doctor, a little bit of Dr. Ease read. But the point is just nutrient dense diet, low in sugar, low in
yeah. Yes.
inflammatory foods, high in fats. You're getting adequate calories, adequate
Yep.
protein,
Yep.
variety of nutrients. She's all about
Yep.
different colors and all of
Yes.
these things. And it's really foundational for any disease. Hers goes the diet for MS goes a little beyond the foundation, but what I think is so powerful about your story is 4 to 5 months is not very long in the
No.
scheme of the healing journey. Like we're in such a microwave culture. We think, oh, antibiotics will be fine in like 10 days, right? We start feeling better after 24 hours. When it comes to healing the body, especially when you have lesions everywhere, if you think about it, it started at the age of 28 and it kind of, it went away. The body, figured out a way to still continue to function. You were able to have
Yeah.
babies, you were able to have a life, but then it
Yeah.
just got to a point where it couldn't anymore. Right. But then, and you did the stories and stuff, but the impact that diet has, and this is just what's really standing out to me, is it's so fast. Like really, it's just so fast. I think about this one client I had in probably the early years of my practice, and she got MS after her HPV vaccine.
Uh-huh.
And she wanted to have babies. She was getting married. She was rail thin. She was dealing with the fatigue, trying to work and all of that. And within 2 years, she was able to have babies, you know, and she was feeling better. And it's just like, and I love that story. But then to think like, here you are with these symptoms and it's 4 to 5 months. Like that's
Yeah,
encouraging.
totally. Yeah. And I did buy her book too. So The Walls Protocol.
Mhm.
Do you have it?
I do. Yeah.
You do. Yeah. It's very thick and it's very informative, but you're right. It's dry. A doctor wrote
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No,
um,
it's I just like to warn people because it's not like this engaging um read. It's really truly informational. And if you love information, you will love the book.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a little dry, but the information is absolutely solid. And you know, she came out with the second version because science, you know, her studies and other studies that have been done have kind of tweak things. Like she realized you don't have to be as strict, right? Like initially be pretty strict, but then you can loosen
Yeah.
up as time goes on, which I think is revolutionary for a lot of people. And it was for her too, like, oh, you don't have to be so strict for so long and you can still stay healthy. You know, so as the science continues to evolve, because nutrition science is really in its infancy, you
Hmm.
know, and but she's leading the way and pioneering a lot of this stuff that we're seeing now with different probiotic strains and gut health. And
Uh-huh.
it's just really cool. But yeah, you know, within, you know, she's in her 70s now and she's still biking and she's gardening and she loves to show off
She
just how much she
is.
moves. It's so
She
fun.
is. And she's planning on living to 120 and
Oh, and
she's
so
still
I wouldn't
working.
doubt it. I would
Yeah.
not doubt
Yeah.
it at all.
She's pretty amazing. Yeah. So what I had a hard time doing is enjoying what I was eating afterwards, right? Because
Mhm.
I knew what I had to eat, but eating broccoli and eating kale and spinach and those kind of things, like, yuck. Like
Yeah.
I remember like reading her book going, oh my God, life is gonna suck, right?
Yeah.
But if you learn how to make certain things, learn how to make vegetables and roast them and, figure out dressings. And, I learned all about fats and I learned about healthy proteins and, eating eggs from pasture raised chickens. And that's what I do. But then I thought, I want to help other people. And I want to create something so that people can enjoy eating again, because that was my issue. Like, I'm like, how do I make these things taste good?
Yeah.
Right. So
That's actually where I started too.
yeah,
It's like you and I have the same mission. Like I'm like, how do I make this taste good for people?
yeah, yeah. When you're used to eating pasta and spaghetti and breads and, and then you have to kind of migrate over to the nutritional veggies and
Yeah,
fruits,
they
right?
don't taste good because especially the dark leafy greens and stuff, they're very mineral rich. It's very
Yeah.
bitter.
Yes.
And then you have to think, you know, sugar and the and artificial sweeteners and MSG and all this stuff that's in processed food and even in high amounts of gluten, like it kind of numbs or like it overstimulates our taste buds, so we actually don't taste food. So even fruits and vegetables don't taste as good as they actually do taste
Yeah.
because, you know, and luckily our tongue, you know, the cells regenerate fairly quickly. But still, like I know people that like, you know, in the name of nutrition will choke down these like 3/4 amount of kale with like half a banana and a bunch of seeds and stuff, and it does not taste good. I'm like, that smells disgusting. I don't know how you're choking it down, right? And I'm like, you know, you don't need that much to reap the benefits. Like it doesn't have to taste bad, but it is a journey, especially if you've never really had to cook outside of boiling water and stirring sauce in a pan.
Right, right. So I created like all these recipes at home, because I have to have flavor. Like my husband can eat grilled chicken and broccoli like every day for the rest of his life. I'm like, I can't do that. I need flavor. So anyway, I wrote a cookbook just to help people, and it's called Nourish Your Way to Health, and you can buy it on Amazon. And no, it was really fun to make. And I hope that people, who buy it enjoy it, because I've got desserts in it. I've got brownies, I've got cookies, I've got coconut ice cream, I've got,
All the things people think they
blackened.
can't eat anymore,
Yeah,
you
I know.
know.
People think that. And, like what you said before, your story is, you were pretty strict with what you ate to
Mm-hmm.
heal. And I was as well. And you can loosen up later on. So, I have a rule with myself. If I eat 90 to 95% good whole foods, if I cheat a little bit, I have some chips,
I
or
call it soul food.
yeah, or you're at a party. How many times are we invited to a party or a graduation party or a wedding, and you feel like you can't eat anything, but you can, when you heal yourself. I mean, I feel like if you're not well, you need to be strict in the beginning, but then after you feel good, you can start eating a little bit of, foods that aren't so healthy for you later, but not
And
a lot, just a little bit.
you'll learn your limit pretty quick,
Yeah.
and the great thing is your body, like sometimes it is just a soul food. It's just a craving. Sometimes it's purely out of convenience because there's nothing else to eat. Um, and there's some things that you have to stay strict on. You really need to stay strict on gluten, things like that. But other than that, like there's a lot of there's room, and you'll find your limit because you will not feel good. Like, and it might be like a half hour, but then sometimes it lasts a few days, and you'll kind of there'll be some trial and error in
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, I'm going to say, like, you mentioned gluten, but I'm going to tell you, every once in a while, I will buy sourdough bread. And
That's a good one.
I don't feel bad. I don't eat the whole loaf in a day. I mean, that would be bad. But eating, a little here, a little there, and sourdough bread is better for you because it has probiotics in it. And it's easier for us to digest,
It's
and I do my
pre-digested
on
by
this.
the yeast and
Yeah.
bacteria and all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've always been a sourdough bread lover. And I used to think that wheat bread was better for you, right? But it's not. I mean, if you're going to eat bread, eat sourdough bread. But don't eat a lot, right? It's not super healthy for you, but if you crave it, it's okay. After you're well and you've healed yourself, you can eat a little bit of it and you'll be okay, you know?
Yeah. So you mentioned your cookbook, and I will make sure to link that in the show notes. What else do you want people to know about being able to reverse their symptoms and heal their body on their own?
Yeah, besides diet, and diet was number one for me. But I am writing another book right now, and it's called The Path to Reverse Multiple Sclerosis. And besides having my story in it, I've interviewed 11 other people who have also healed themselves. And I'm planning on getting it out in August. But it was all these stories are really inspiring. Some people were struggling for like years, like 15 up to 20 years before they figured out that food and other strategies can help them. Besides food, you've got exercise, right?
Hmm.
Um, Stress relief. Stress causes disease. You have to manage that. Um, Breathing exercises really help. If you're a spiritual person, what's your day-to-day life like? Are you a happy person? Like, do you have a job that you hate? You got to have some joy in your life. If you don't have joy in your life, you won't heal either. So there's a lot
Another one I think of is trauma release and
of
trauma processing,
absolutely.
because trauma, if we don't if our brains are not able to handle it, it'll push it aside, but by pushing it aside, it goes into our body. And
It
so,
does.
there's times when food and lifestyle will get you about 80% there, and you just can't break past that. And that's when you have to start digging deeper. And
Yeah.
so diet by far, as you and I both know, is the foundation, but
Hmm.
it is not a magic bullet. It is not an end all be all. I would say for about 70% of people, it's usually diet alone, and it's life changing, but you can't neglect sleep. You can't neglect stress management. You can't neglect joy. And if you're still not better, then it's time to see a counselor, and kind of start doing some trauma processing. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of EMDR, or there's other modalities that are similar to that where it uses the body mind connection. So yeah, that's there. I cannot wait to read this book. I think, when it comes to disease management or disease reversal, and in things like that. Like the focus is so clinical, right? I love that. Again, the fact that you were able to basically reverse your symptoms within months, which is huge. I want to encourage people that like healing is a journey. It's not an overnight thing. And, and it's a process. And women like Adrienne, and sharing her story and her passion and sharing her recipes with you, like, and then to share stories of overcoming. It's not just another book on what disease is and what it does, and here's some strategies, but like just to read how other people have overcome the same struggle gives
Yeah.
so much hope. And I feel like hope is almost like the biggest thing because you can eat all the kale and all the liver and all of the things that you want, but if you don't believe it's going to help, it's only
Hmm.
going to help so far.
You're so right. You're so right about that. And I'm so glad you mentioned trauma too, because that's in my book as well. Um, and every single person I interviewed, their stories are so different, and some people, they, so one gal was blind three times, and she healed herself three times. One gal, didn't realize that food was so important, and she'd get well and then she would stop getting well, and then she would get well and then she would get worse. And finally she's like, okay, I'm gonna, get on this diet for like 2 months and see what it does. And she healed like so quickly after that. Yeah, so tons of stories: paralysis, Bell's palsy. um, I can go on and on, but yeah, you'll have to read these stories because I think everybody with MS will relate to at least one of these stories.
Again, I'm just so grateful that you have turned your story into a way to help others to not only make their life more enjoyable in the process, because everybody who has MS, if they want to go naturally, are going to read, is going to read Terry Wall's book. Like
Yeah,
it is the standard, right? But then again, you look at these recipes and you're like, how do I make this doable?
yeah.
Right.
Bird Walls does some have recipes, but like in my book, like I gotta have pictures. So I created these recipes and I took a picture of every one. So I need pictures. I need to see what I'm making.
Pictures help. And then also, again, sometimes, especially in the clinical world, it's basically just nutrients,
Yeah,
right? And like, it's just learning to enjoy food as it is, but that's really hard to do, as
it
you
is.
know. It's really
Yeah,
hard to do. And so I love that you were like, I'm going to take this and I need flavor, I need variety. And you know what? I'm not going to keep this to myself. Like, so I love that so very much. And like I said, I also love that you're staying so positive and like, again, just sharing these stories. Like you went and searched these women out and they
and
get
two
to
men.
and two men. Yay. And, we get, so you searched these people out and they were willing to share their story and they were willing to share the struggles, blind three different
Yeah,
times or would get
yeah.
better and get worse. And I feel like that's so like on the chronic illness journey, which is really just our bodies crying out for help, right?
Mhm.
And, when we can give our bodies what it needs to work effectively, 99% of the time, we're going to improve 100% or at least dramatically, right?
Mhm.
And to be like, oh, it's okay if I take a step back. It just means I'm missing a piece of the puzzle or I'm not taking as good of care of myself as I should. Or, I mean, viruses happen, stress happens,
Yep.
trauma happens. And so it's like, it's not like you're failing if this happens because these stories are like it happened to me three times and then I was able to figure it out, and it's like, oh, I'm not failing, it's just part of learning how to take care of myself
Yes.
completely,
Yeah.
and like maybe the food's there but the stress isn't there, or maybe the sleep is bad, or again, there's a viral component or a trauma component, and it's just this like healing and health is not a destination, it's a journey.
It
Right.
is.
And we can always get better. I find like I get to a place and then I plateau because I'm like, I'm happy. Like I'm good. I don't need to continue. And then something happens. I'm like, oh, okay, time to add another layer. And I'm eternally curious. So I read and study all week, every week. But that's why I'm a health coach. I just want to keep on learning, right? But
Me too.
for yeah. But and not everybody's there. Everybody just sometimes we just want to feel good enough that we can live our lives. And I'm just so grateful and excited for you to be able to share this hope with everybody. So,
Thank you. There's one more thing I wanted to mention
yes, please.
because I'm guessing you were on this journey with me. Where okay, I was loved sugar. I was kind of a sweet tooth person. Was that you?
Oh, yeah, I have a total sweet tooth.
Oh yeah. So I just want to tell everybody, I had a really hard time with that. Like right after I knew how to change my diet, like I did it cold turkey, and I don't recommend that.
I do
It
not
was
recommend that either.
really but I said no to sugar for a month. So but it got easier and it got easier. So after 30 days, 45 days, and then I tried to take a bite of a regular cookie with sugar in it, and it tasted like poison to me.
Mhm.
So I want to tell people as well that when you wean yourself off of sugar, it will taste too sweet for you eventually, and you won't like it.
Yep.
So our taste buds change, which I didn't realize. And so
Oh,
that was a big aha for me too.
another one I remember when I first got off of artificial sweeteners,
Oh,
right? And then I was out somewhere and I had some and it tasted chemically. Like it just didn't taste good.
uh-huh.
And a lot of people like, "Oh, I can't give up my Diet Coke. I can't give up this. I can't give up that." But then you have to if you want to feel better.
Well, yep.
And if you can stick to it, your taste buds, it doesn't taste good
Yeah.
anymore,
Yep.
and but the going cold turkey for very few people who are all or nothing people, that might work, but I find it's not sustainable. It's way
No.
better to slowly, what you do is I call it crowding out. You start adding
Yep.
things in
Yep.
and you crowd out the foods. And it's just a much more sustainable way to do that. But in the transition, getting a cookbook that uses flavor, that uses herbs, that uses fats, that makes food taste good, because fat makes food taste good. It's also a source of calories. If you're going on a diet for MS, it's a very low carb diet. It has to be. And it has to be
Yep.
very high fat because your nervous system is cholesterol and fat. And so you need a lot of that for it to heal. And for one, it kind of freaks us out mentally because we're told, oh, low fat's been like the thing, even though it's not anymore, but it's still kind of
Right.
preached,
Yeah.
and
A lot of
it's,
people still don't know about it.
yeah.
Yes.
And when it comes to MS, this is a secret. You'll read it in Terry Wall's book, and I'm sure in your cookbook, it's a very high fat, high cholesterol diet, and it has to be because
Mhm.
it's your nervous system, and your nervous system is cholesterol. Your brain is 60% cholesterol. In your cells are cholesterol, you know, and it's very, very healing. It's very effective. Will you always be that high? No. But while your body's healing, it needs the things that it needs the correct fuel to be able
Yep.
to heal properly.
Yep.
And so, like, making these transitions, it's scary. It's making change is hard,
Yep. It is.
and any tool that you can find to make it easier. A lot of people think that being healthy is miserable and it's not supposed to taste good. And I think you and I have this mission to be like, no,
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
can taste amazing in the process. And it's just like knowing where to turn and
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
to go to. So when you reached out to me months ago, I was so, so excited because MS is one that's not talked about very often. And I think it's just so unfortunate. And so I was just like, I'm so excited. And then, I was going to do another episode just about the diet, but I don't think I need to now because you and I've talked about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I just want to encourage you, if you're in this position and you want to try, I recommend 3 months. Um, to really commit to it because it takes like once you remove this stuff, like when my daughter has celiac disease, and when we cut out gluten it took
Uh-huh.
about 3 weeks for the
Uh-huh.
proteins to leave her blood, right? And then
Mm.
it takes about 3 months for the immune system to turn off. Once
Mm.
the immune system turns off, then I mean there's a little bit of healing, but that's when the real healing starts.
Mhm.
So it's like you kind of have to commit to months. Yours was relative. I feel like it's relatively quickly for most people. It just kind of depends, but I always say give yourself 6 months to a year,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you know, I've seen people, the younger they are when they start, the faster it happens usually. I've seen a gentleman with MS wheelchair bound within months of symptoms starting. He had no idea, and did the diet for 3 months, and then he was up and rocking out on stage. He was a worship leader and jumping up and down and all this stuff, and he didn't have to stay strict with it. He was able to heal and stuck with it 90/10, and he's been great ever since.
That's so great. Right. And then with the sugar, I wish I would have just eaten more fruit. In my cookbook, I use honey, maple syrup, and coconut sugar
Mm-hmm.
because those are our natural sugars. I
Yeah.
wish I would have known really more about that before I like cut myself off cold turkey because
Yeah.
that was so hard.
Yeah, I always get a little frustrated when people are like, no fruit. And I'm like, are you just taking away all joy from life? Like, you're taking away sugar. I'm like, but now you're taking away fruit, which is also a really it's easy. It's a great source of antioxidants. And I mean, yeah, with the
Lots
tropical
of
fruits,
vitamins.
lots of
Yep.
vitamins, fiber. I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, some of the tropical fruits are lower in fiber and higher in sugar, but nothing's going to be worse than a Snickers bar or cake or,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that, especially with all the other stuff that comes with it. And so I feel like people get on this perfectionist route, like they have to be perfect from day one. And I'm like, how about we transition? And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like you're on that same boat of like, I did it wrong. Here's a better way that's less
Yeah. Yeah.
miserable.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But it's all about what kind of person you are too. Like I was like, I want to get well as soon as I can, you
Yeah.
know. So I just did it. But somebody else might take a little bit longer and they want to transition into that healthy food
Yeah,
because it's a big change.
it is. And change is hard. Even if change may not be difficult, but it can be hard, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not hard. It's, like it's not difficult, but it's hard. And it's a
Yeah.
mental thing. But because again, you're changing the way you grocery shop. You're changing the way you meal prep. You're changing the way you cook dinner. And if you've
Yeah.
never cooked vegetables before or anything like that, like it takes a lot of mental effort. It might not take more
Right.
time, but it's a lot of, or if you've never chopped vegetables and you're cutting
Yep.
your finger and your knife is dull and you're using
Yep.
like the wrong knife, like I go to my best friend's house and she has the worst cooking utensils. Her knives are dull. And I'm like, I can't cook I'm like, I'm doing what I can, but no wonder you don't cook. Like, you don't have the tools to make it easy.
And then also learning like what fats are good, right? Like I
Yes.
have to learn what to cook with.
Yeah,
So
no
like
seed oils.
avocado oil is my
Yeah.
go-to. Coconut oil works. I actually buy, Kerrygold, that brand. So
Yep.
it's butter from grass-fed cows. It's better
Yeah.
for you than your typical butter.
Yeah. I
But
also like
that's
to,
good too.
and then I'll fry like chicken tenders and stuff in lard and tallow and
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that.
It's okay.
My pies are I made with lard, the traditional
Yeah,
way. And
yeah.
people are like, oh my gosh, that's so bad for you. Actually, it's not. It's very, very good for you when it
I
comes from
know.
healthy cows or healthy
Mhm.
animals, because there's duck fat and pork fat and,
Yep.
cow fat.
Yep.
It's actually not bad for you. And I think that's the other thing is like we've been so ingrained of, oh, heart health, seed oils, but those are so
Yes.
inflammatory.
And cholesterol. Like,
Yeah.
remember, like everybody thought that was bad for you, and it's
Yeah.
really not.
No, and that was reversed back in 2016, about 60 years too late, but it is what it is. But it was so quiet. Like the news didn't talk about it. Like saturated fats are not the demon. Cholesterol is not the root
But you still
cause of
can't
heart
get
disease.
information on it, you
No.
know?
Mm-mm. And it's beyond frustrating, but like we now know that inflammation is the root cause of, cardiovascular disease and congestive heart failure. It's the carbs and the seed oils. It's not the eggs and the butter.
Yes.
And so when it comes to the MS world, I found with my clients that fat is like the hardest thing for people to overcome. Like they'll do the sugar because everybody knows, oh, you cut off sugar, you'll lose weight. It's bad for you. It's like cocaine from the brain, la, 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 la,
Right, right.
right? It's hard. But I find what's more difficult is wrapping the head around cholesterol is not bad for me. It's good for me. And these
Yeah.
health, even, coconut oil, you get the stuff that's white, that's not translucent, except in the summer.
Yeah.
and, and like just how beneficial that is for,
And red meat.
and red meat's good for you. And
Yeah. So
that's a
remember for so
powerhouse.
long, like, don't eat red meat. It's so bad for you. But it's good for you as long as they come from grass-fed animals.
Yeah, if it's raised and it's not on its natural diet, it's, humanely slaughtered, all of that.
Yeah.
It's, and yeah, I mean, I don't struggle with MS, but I struggle with anemia, and I eat red meat 6 days a week.
Do you?
I do.
Yeah.
I do a
Four,
steak and I
four
do
or
a
five.
small steak and eggs for breakfast every morning. And I actually started that back in January, and I was trying to heal my body from adrenal fatigue. And I was like, I'm just going to do this experiment. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt so good. I've just kind of kept it going. And, I've been getting lots of blood work done lately and all that. And I'm in great shape. Like my cholesterol is not elevated. And my inflammation markers are not high. I'm not even remotely close to being anemic, which is great. And so it's just like, it's just very interesting, like there's all
Mm-hmm.
these different movements. And, when it comes to, the MS diet's a therapeutic diet, right? But the great thing is with therapeutic diets is once you're healed, you don't have to live there. It's a tool. Like if you start getting inflamed, you start getting symptoms, you go back, but then you can kind of move back to just a more normal, what I call a normal, healthy way of eating. And it's like a tool in the toolbox at that point.
Yeah, for sure. For
Has
sure.
that been your story? Have you
Yeah.
found that to be true for you?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. And like every January, I do a dry January and a no sugar January, because after the holidays, you always a little more sugar, a little more alcohol. And so every January, I do that. And I always feel so good after the first 5 days. After that, I feel really great. And I'm always like, oh, I wish I just that sugar season. I'm like, I wish I could just do a little better. Well, at least in the beginning, I felt that way. Now I'm just like, it is what it is, and I'll recover at the end of it. But
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I do for sugar is, well, like sweet fruit, like watermelon. Like that's very sugary. I mean,
yes.
it's got a lot of fructose in it. But I eat a lot of dates and raisins too.
Mm,
And those are good for you in small amounts.
yeah,
That covers my cravings.
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And I cannot wait. I'll be linking your cookbook. And then when your book releases, go ahead and send me the link, and I'll update the description so that can be in there for people to listen to and be able to purchase and get that hope that you have to offer. Is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with before we go?
Well, I just want to let everyone know, if you know somebody or you have MS, that you can heal yourself and your loved ones can heal themselves. They just need the right information. So don't believe your doctor that says, diet doesn't work and you're just going to have to, take this medicine and you're going to have to end up in a wheelchair, because that is not factual. Because that's what so many doctors still tell us, and it's what we believe, and it's not the truth.
Thank you. I
Yeah, you're welcome.
wholeheartedly believe that. So thank you again for coming on. I'm so excited to be on this mission with you to revolutionize people's health and give them hope and to give them good, delicious food. I love that so much. So thank you.
Thanks, Marianne.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you found this episode helpful, would you do me a favor and help others find it by leaving a review, sharing a screenshot on social media, or sharing the link with a friend? By you sharing what you've learned, others are able to find this podcast and join our community. Be sure to check out my website, www.roadtolivingwhole.com, for over 160 delicious recipes, a variety of meal plans, and a blog packed full of even more healthy living tips. If you'd like to learn more about how to work with me as your coach, you can schedule a free consult through www.roadtolivingwhole.com/health-coaching/. Until next time, friend. Bye.